I mean, just stay in front of the fan though, because that whole little wind situation is.
Oh
It's like
yeah, it was working. It was working.
Yeah, it's like you're on a yacht in lockdown, which is pretty cool. So, hi guys.
Oh, can we?
Angelika.
Should I not curse on this?
You can curse, not curse. That is completely up to you.
Just because they just come out and yeah.
Don't worry. You'll see during the course of conversation we have that in common. So,
okay.
How are you guys both doing?
Good.
Yeah. How's lockdown
been?
Good.
It almost seems like more normal than abnormal now. Lockdown. Yeah. So I don't know. You just find a routine and make it work, I guess.
Yeah. What about you, Jodi? How's it been going?
It's been depressing.
I love that you can say depressing with a smile.
Yeah, like sometimes it's fine and then sometimes it's not, and then like my neighbors, like I think they just don't understand that we're on lockdown. So like 6 people is like across the street in this one yard, and I just be like, this is why.
Yeah.
It's the lockdown, but it's fine. So I'm good, but also depressed, but also great. So.
What have you been doing to keep entertained?
This is like my studio / apartment. So I paint like all the time. I draw like all the time, and like binge watch Netflix stuff simultaneously. So that's how
What are we watching right now?
I just started Lucifer.
What about you, Angelika?
Well, initially when the first lockdowns happened, I was doing the same as Jodi. But with this second wave of lockdowns, I guess, I'm considered a subcontractor with my mural, so I've been able to keep working. And yeah, Netflix binging, Pose has been my recent binge.
I already finished Lucifer. Don't know that one, but such is life. Right now, I'm kind of in the middle of Modern Family reruns. It's one of those things that I can just watch over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I've watched like from season 1. So is it like season 11 now?
Season 10,
like on Netflix, yeah.
Like that show is the best show ever, and everybody has to watch it.
Yeah, super necessary.
You have a favorite character?
Phil. Phil Dunphy is a very complex man that I don't think a lot of people, understand and relate to, but I relate to Phil. I really do.
Okay.
Yeah. Phil's a cool dude.
I've never heard that one. I've never heard that one before.
Probably the most complimentary description of Phil ever.
is what I'm saying. That's very charitable. I don't think he's complex at all. I think he's one of the simplest beings on this planet. Anyhow, let's jump straight into it. So you're both artists in your own right, both creatives in your own right, and both women by birth and genetic design. So where do those roads meet? Like, do you find being a woman in a creative industry is more challenging than it needs to be? Is it annoying? Are the barriers low? Are the barriers high? Talk me through that. Bearing in mind you're speaking to somebody who has no clue.
Go ahead, Jodi. I know you're itching.
So I was like, Jella got this.
I mean, I'll start it off to say it definitely doesn't make it easier. Definitely not. I think me and Jodi sort of have a parallel journey in the art world in terms of timeline. And it has definitely not been something that has helped us. But I think we're almost at a point, I feel like, where we've turned it around, like just through the work we put in, where it's like now is the time to be a young female artist in the Bahamas.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think it does get annoying sometimes when you see like little slick stuff happening. It has not been like made my journey easier whatsoever. I think that it actually like made it harder for multiple reasons attached to my womanhood. Yeah, so I think that it's we're at a point now where more women are in positions of power, where a lot of us are being heard more, and like our criticisms, critiques, and input at some level are being respected now. So things are like changing a bit, but I think we still have like a lot more work to do. But I think it's almost like 10 years that Jella and I have been doing this. But so like from like the first year to now, it's been some progress. Good, yeah. A lot of progress.
When do you think, so if your time frame is 10 years, let's use that sort of spectrum. When do you think the turning point was where, it, you know, going up the hill is always difficult. Then when you get to the top, you can take a breath. Then when you're going down, it's a little bit easier. Have you reached that point? Have you hit the apex yet?
I wouldn't say that we have. I definitely, like, when you were describing that, I was like, boy, we still going uphill. Like, you know, it's still uphill, but I feel like, you know, we've crossed that 10-year threshold, and I feel like in the next 10 years we might be at the top of the hill, you know, because it's a slow battle. And to answer your first question, I feel like it's more recent than we necessarily choose to acknowledge or you know, make a point of, that we've even come to this point where we've still going uphill, but we've changed gears and it's made it a little easier type of thing to get up the hill.
Okay, gotcha. What do you think, Jodi?
No, same thing. Like, I would have said the exact same thing that Angelika said. An excuse, the chickens, if you could add them.
Dude, I have chickens and dogs making noise. I'm so embarrassed right now.
Only because the puppies are downstairs, they're not in here yapping, making all kinds of noise myself. So I feel you. It adds to the vibe. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I want to jump into what the Bahamas' cultural identity is. A lot of the, let's give this some context. So a lot of the discussions you see on social media in God knows just about every forum, when it comes to discussing Bahamian culture, I think it's safe to say more people than less seem to say that we don't have a culture, or they don't know how to identify it. From the artistic perspective, what are the hallmarks of our culture, and how are you guys contributing to that preservation or cataloging of our culture?
Well, for me, I think that it's like very dismissive and erasive to say that we don't have culture, we don't have Bahamian culture, and that it can't be like pinpointed and defined. Because when you look at the very definition of culture, it's just a study of the way that people interact. And then you look at the products of that interaction. So you look at what we eat on a regular basis, what we eat, how we talk, how we dress, just like communication and what that communication births. So I remember when I was I was teaching this like summer camp, and the kids had to like paint a picture of Bahamian culture, and this girl put like Wendy's and KFC on the painting, and I was like, wow, this is Bahamian culture. Like, Bahamian culture is the consumption of Wendy's and KFC.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
I feel like culture definitely encompasses like tradition and habitual things that we do as a people, and Wendy's and KFC definitely come under the habitual umbrella.
So it's not this
never
very
really
like
thought about that.
Yeah, it's not this stoic thing. It's not something that like is like set in stone and like just like, what's the word? Like fixed. It's not a fixed concept. It's like an ever-changing, ever-evolving, ever-growing thing.
Culture evolves. Culture
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me and my work, what I at least try to do is I try to like go back and go forward. So I look at the culture that I was raised in, how I was raised in the home of my parents, and the culture that existed in that, and how like larger Bahamian culture informed that. And then just like how I'm socializing now, the conversations that I have with my friends, how we're feeling about different things, and I bring all of that into the fold of my work. So yeah, it's a little more it's not as like transparent in my work, but it's definitely there, that cataloging of culture.
Is that where the Queen Catherine Johnson IV moniker came from?
Oh, definitely.
I think for the benefit of those who don't know what that is, you should explain that.
So
I actually thought that was quite a cool thing. I remember when I saw it on Instagram, I was like, yeah, I'm with this shit.
It stemmed from looking at the emergency orders, and at the end of the like official orders that the Governor General would have, like wherever his signature is, at the end of it says "God Save the Queen."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why are you still doing that foolishness? And I was like, well, okay, like if there's any queens that need saving, it's me. So like, why don't I just be a queen? So whenever he says God Save the Queen, it could be me. And my my great grandmother's name is Catherine Johnson. And you know, with like monarchies and different things like that, when like in regards to naming their children, which is like this huge thing, they look at like past names of monarchs and like take different names from different places and put it together. So that's where the Catherine Johnson comes from.
Very good. Thank you, Your Majesty.
Oh.
I must remember to bow in reverence whenever I see you in public now. I'm
like,
gonna do it in the most
like, really chill. So like
no.
I love you and
I have to make it awkward.
But if you're like a king, you could be a king too. Like I would love like for Angelika to like be Queen Angelika Wallace-Whitfield.
Yeah, I fucks with the Queen title.
I think I would choose like a Russian or Soviet name, like something about being, you know, King Boris Vladimir just sounds powerful. I don't know. Anyway, I'll revisit that. And Angelika, so hope is a weapon. Hit me with the backdrop to that, and then I'm gonna tie those two thoughts in and ask you guys the two-part question.
Okay, so hope is a weapon. So in 2018, in September 2018, the NAGB, the National Art Gallery, put out a call for their national exhibition. And it's a exhibition that happens every 2 years at the NAGB. And like I said, you put a proposal and you're chosen. And this year I wanted something I wanted something that would not be within the gallery. I didn't want a piece of artwork that would only be accessible to the people that entered the gallery space. So I decided to do a street tagging project, and that was Hope is a Weapon. It was sort of my first ever experience out putting art publicly. Pretty sure it's illegal, but I don't, dwell on that. And yeah, it just became something really fun. Whenever I'd have an artist block, I'd go and tag a few places and come back home to the studio and do some more work. Recently, I've started incorporating it into my canvas works or into my mural works. And it was supposed to start and end within that show. But a ripple effect happened. A year later, of course, Hurricane Dorian devastated the country, and I was able to use that project to raise money for Hurricane Dorian relief and continue to do so. So I think it's found virtue, and I guess it's become a brand. I don't really like to word it like that, but it has. And I don't know, it's just sort of come into its own organically.
Yeah, quite a cool campaign, I thought. And I wondered about the legality of tagging different places, because I'd just be somewhere in Nassau and be like, Hope is a weapon. Wait, can she do that? But I mean,
I will say, for the purpose of this public forum, I do get permission most of the time.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough. Have you ever had like a run-in with the police where they were like, "Hey, what are you doing? Stop spray painting the side of this thing"? Or
no, not yet.
Do you sort of dress up in like a cat suit, like 2 a.m. and just go out in the nighttime?
Oh yeah, I have my cat suit ready. But lockdown has definitely like paused my tagging just because there is surveillance everywhere, and you know, you're not allowed out after dark and things like that.
I don't know how much of an adrenaline junkie you are, but I think that will kind of add to the thrill for me.
Yeah, you know, I've been tempted a couple nights. I was like, maybe there's somewhere I could walk to and like run back. But yeah, no, hasn't happened yet.
Jodi, you might have to bail your friend out. Just be on standby.
I roll in with the queen. I'm good.
Exactly. Her Majesty will pardon you. Now, you both have your own respective campaigns that represent, I guess, similar ideals, but in different ways. Do you think that you are the leaders of such a movement in terms of expression?
Oh, that's a question.
Yeah, yeah. When you say leaders of a movement, like, you mean locally or?
Well, I mean, take it how you want. I think if I had to give it context, what I would say was, do you find that there are, you know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So do you find that there are other artists now that, in coming into their own, encompass any of the styles that you guys employ?
I would say that I think our community works more as an ecosystem than anything else. So we feed one another, or like, I'll just leave food for you, if, you know, that kind of way. So,
big symbiosis.
Yeah, so I think that we all inspire each other in very clear and distinct ways. So if you see, like, you know, somebody else doing like work with police and all that sort of stuff, like, more often than not, I probably had a conversation with this person about that work. And then it just manifested in their own way. And I think that because we're such a small community in such a small space, all of us are inspired by a lot of the same things too. So I think it's more of a circle rather than like a line, like someone leading, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Got you. Angelika, anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I would have said it exactly the same. Like she said, I've seen works since Hope is a Weapon that are very similar, whether it's just different words in the same font used in the same way. And again, it's usually younger artists or younger artists that I've had a conversation with. And because our community is so small, it's never like a matter of feeling like your artwork was stolen or anything, because you always sort of know the source. And again, we're not the source of these things. You know, we've been inspired by someone before us, you know, or someone else. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Both women, both in the art world. What seems to be the most intrusive element of, I guess, the patriarchy in terms of your respective parallels in art?
Did you say intrusive or intrinsic?
Intrusive.
Intrusive. I think by nature, patriarchy is just intrusive.
Oh God.
Really, there's no common obstacle that you find. Like, you know, everybody likes to say men get in women's business. I'll just say I kind of agree. So is there a sort of a common element that you find, you know, you're making this progress towards XYZ outcome, and then it's just like, fuck, now I have to deal with this jackass?
I mean, I'll start at a shallow point. They get paid more than us for the same jobs.
Yeah.
Which I think is like a worldwide theme, you know, a global theme. No matter what the project or maybe position at an institution, their starting pay point and what they're offered will 9.9 times out of 10 be more than what we're offering.
Which is dumb, because I think if men understood that if everybody had equal pay, everybody would also make more money across the board. I mean,
speaking,
I could go into the details of that argument, but that's not really the point of the conversation. But I feel you on that. Jodi, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I think, you know, I laugh because, you know, Angelika and I have had these conversations like so many times. I think one of the two, that was four, but two obstacles is that we are not considered in the same vein that men are considered. So just that consideration alone makes it difficult. So my like bachelor's degree would not like the prominence of that won't stand up to like the prominence of a man who has a bachelor's degree. And if I have
or even a man with an associate.
Associates, like on no degree.
Yeah.
Or like if I'm in like 20 international exhibitions and he's in like 19, like somehow his 19 is like greater than my 20. Like even like the level of work, like just what people will do for men because of this like concept that men aren't like given enough opportunity. You have to like put them in the right spaces, or else they could fall by the wayside kind of like mentality. Is like, okay, I will do like so much more for you than I would this woman because, you know, she can make it on her own. Like she can handle herself. Yeah, and I think the second thing that I was gonna say is that for us, I think we have to do so much more. Like, you just have to bring all of ourselves to the work, and you have to bring all of ourselves to the community, and we have to extend so much, and you have to like be ever present, and we have like your website have to be great, and you just have like all of this like fabrication and like whatever to you and your work, and then it's like, oh, but he's cool, I'm gonna go with him, and then it's like all of the things you told me I should do, I did, but
yeah, and I think that's true on so many levels. Like even when you're talking about, well, she had sort of touched on it, our professionalism is expected to be top tier. Like a male artist, many male artists, like I don't, you know, I'm not dogging on anyone in particular. They don't have to answer your email. You could happen to buck them at an art show and be like, oh, remember that thing I sent you that's really important? The due date was 2 weeks ago. Can you get back to me? Whereas if we were not even a day late, like the day before the due date, they're emailing us like, oh, are you still going to do this? Yeah. And even for, you know, when we're talking about our works or artist talks, I find at least in 2019, most of the artist talks involved women. And it's because we have been put into this practice where we have to learn to talk about our art more and validate our art more. You can ask a male artist, like, what does this painting mean? And he could be like, well, I was feeling red, so I painted red. And everyone's like, wow, profound. Whereas we have to be like, and the red represents the blood of the da-da-da-da-da. But in other cultures, red also means, and then red. And it's just like, what is expected of us to validate our artwork and ourselves as artists and as professionals is just so much higher. And I think, you know, if you look way back in history, like 16th century history, men were artists, men were the artists, they were the craftsmen, and any woman that was practicing art was doing it in secret. And as time went on, it became a hobby for women, again, whether they were doing it in secret or not. They were learning from their husbands or their fathers.
Because they went to art school, right?
Exactly. And men were always the professionals in the field. And I think obviously that's taken a shift as, you know, the economy has also shifted. And it's a field that more women are coming into and getting shine in. But yet there's still this need for us to validate ourselves so much more. Yeah. And to sort of prove ourselves as artists or that we deserve a seat at the table.
Yeah. And gatekeepers. That was my point, but gatekeepers.
I would suppose that is that's a trickle down from just a general societal perception. I don't know if either of you saw the IG live I did with Alex Baha Yogi, but one of the things I asked her was, how far do you think we are from equality, from a woman's standpoint? And I'm going to ask you both the same question. How far do you think societally, generally speaking, stepping outside of the art world, do you think the Bahamas is from equality?
Oh, the Bahamas, you just took it to, you know, you took it a couple of years further, I think.
And like societally, not like constitutionally, right?
Well, it's kind of hard for them to not go hand in hand, but for sake of argument, let's say societally, since the mechanisms for changing the Constitution are sort of you know, that's a little more out of our hands.
Yeah.
So let's say societally, how far do you think we are?
I think a lot of that starts with education. Like, even look at the last women's rights referendum, you know, it because of, you know, the lack of education in the country, that they were able to be sort of gaslighted into thinking that it was something it wasn't, that it was about gay rights, that it was about so many other things. And, you know, the propaganda was able to sort of change as you know, as it does, that's the purpose of propaganda, but it was able to change the outcome. And I feel like education is going to play a big role in that, and also just how we raise our kids, which is also a matter of re-education.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, yeah, the referendum showed us like exactly how people, women and men, thought about us. And just like now, where we're seeing conversations about should there be a woman prime minister, with the DNA having like a woman leader now. Yeah, I think we have a long ways to go, because like Bahamians are very conservative in theory, like people, and that's one of the things that I'm like starting to like notice. Like, our beliefs are like extremely conservative and very like patriarchal. So if it like is outside of like God, man, woman, children hierarchy, like in whatever sector of our existence, they just reject it. And that's perpetuated, like Angelika said, in the educational system, in churches, and just like by propaganda that politicians and things like that use to drive home their agendas. So I think it's re-education, one, but it's also two, persons who don't subscribe to those like very radical conservative beliefs, to like be more vocal about their beliefs, be more vocal about and be more like loud and proud about their existence. Whether you are like heterosexual or not, like just if you're not that conservative person, like you're this liberal person, like be liberal in all the liberalness and very open with that, please. So that people can see that it's not such a far-fetched concept for women and men to be equal.
Yeah, okay. And I feel like that last point Jodi just made about being unapologetic and being loud, I feel like artists definitely play a key role in that, and I think we've seen that throughout 2020 especially, and that artists are tools to get this information out there, you know, by means of visuals, music, you know, social media campaigns. Like, you know, we definitely play a key role in that, and I think this year more than ever I've learned the responsibility that we have as artists, to do these things and to respond to the current times, and to do so authentically, and I think it's just an affirmation that our opinion and our work matters.
Yeah. What was the moment that when was the point that you had that realization? Like, when did the importance, you know, set in and you were like, damn, I really got a torch to carry here?
I mean, it's been throughout, I guess, since March. I mean, it's always been something that you know and you hear, but I think I've experienced that firsthand since about March, and you know, obviously being in lockdown, we're a little more keyed into social media, and just seeing what is happening, especially in America right now, or at least that's what we're the most privy to. And so many names would go unspoken without artists and graphic designers, or graphic designers who are artists, you know, and activists, and people vocalizing these things. And I it's important. And I think that was sort of the turning point the last couple months for me.
What about you, Jodi?
The turning point for me came a little earlier, just because of the nature of the things that I made over the years. But I function as a curator as well, and I was curating at Central Bank, assisting with the curation at Central Bank, and they have like this annual like art exhibition with like children, and And I always loved it. And I think in particular, I think it was like 2014, like the kids, and Angelika could speak to this too, like the kids make very radical work. Like there's like a huge section of the competition that's just like socioeconomic commentary by children. And I was like, if these kids could like make work about like poverty, crime, like,
and it's probably very honest, I would imagine.
So honest, so raw.
Yeah, the level of critical theory that these 10th graders have, it's insane.
Do you ever see that in younger kids?
Yeah, so it's like 7th grade to 12th grade.
Oh, okay, full spectrum. Yeah. Cool. All right.
So like, and you're like, why are you even thinking about police brutality? Like, you're 14, go play. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, the reality that we live in, that children are hyper aware of the times and they're responding to it through their work. So if these kids whose only priority is to be a child is doing this in their work, why am I playing it safe? I think that was my reality. Why am I playing safe? Why am I trying to be politically correct? Why am I like not trying to ruffle feathers? Like, forget that. Like, the children ain't care, so why I gotta care?
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I feel like it's not being. It would be less radical not to do it, not to say it, not to express it, than to do so, because that's the kind of voice that people need. And from a personal standpoint, I've always felt that artists have. I don't want to call it a responsibility because that may be too heavy, but artists have an innate ability to tell a story, but the perspective from which you tell a story always remains, even when the reality changes. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I greatly appreciate, particularly when it comes to kids that maybe doing any kind of creative project, because it's always very, very to the point, very honest. Kids don't sugarcoat things with words, with anything. So when you see children, I guess, depicting police brutality and poverty and all of these other very serious socioeconomic issues, I mean, that's quite telling, I think. You're that young and this is your concern. Why do you think older people don't care? Why doesn't that sectogenarian, bracket care? Why don't they care as much? Why aren't we seeing
I don't think it's a matter of them not caring. I think it's sort of what Jodi touched on, like the idea that, especially as art professionals, like you're trying to pay your bills. So it's almost intimidating to ruffle feathers of the people that are, paying you or exactly. Or like giving you opportunity. Yeah, exactly. And, on a very small scale, when you're in this small art community, you have this weight where you feel like, oh, if I put this out, this could be make or break, for my career. You put that weight on yourself. And I don't think many things are necessarily make or break, especially when you're working through like an artistic concept. But you definitely put that pressure on yourself. And I feel like it just makes you shy away from these topics, especially like critical theory topics. And a lot of the institutions are very entangled with the government too. So for example, there's certain things you can include in artwork that are going into national public institutions, and it just makes you play it a little more safe. Well, if I paint a sunset, then that'll definitely make it.
Put a pin in that 1 second. What kinds of things can't you put in artwork for public institutions?
You can't, obviously you can use the coat of arms on any sort of things like that. Because you have to remember, in our national institutions, there's a government representative that usually comes. So if anything that is too,
provocative,
any side, you have to tone it down a bit, or they would just ask you to censor it in a way, or they would ask like, what kind of wording can we use to, warn people, like, this is like PG-13, like whatever, yeah, it gets very political, because art is political, and these institutions are still in political spaces. So now if we had like more institutions that were not in political spaces, that had the budgets that these other places had, then we wouldn't have these problems. But that's just not our reality at the moment. So
Fair enough. I mean, I've always known that you can't, depict a coat of arms, but I didn't know that it extended too much further beyond that.
Yeah, listen, because Angelika and I worked as curators, curatorial assistants, gallery assistants, whatever, like almost every job that I had, Angelika also was in that position. We have really parallel resumes. But you just see and you hear certain things, and maybe some things you probably shouldn't have seen and heard. But yeah, and I think as an artist, you internalize that too, because you see these things play out, because you had the conversations, because how this artist wasn't able to do this. Like, you tend to internalize that, and that affects your practice.
For sure. And I think from the curatorial standpoint, Jodi and I both know, like, the top doesn't end with the curator. There's always people above the curator, and that they are setting, certain parameters for the curator. And I think when we're now working as artists and submitting work, you already are privy to those parameters. And again, if you're putting your heart into a piece of work or a proposal, you want to make it, innately. By proposing something, you want it to make it. And I think it almost, again, feels safer to play it safe, for lack of a better word.
Do we actually have any banned artwork? Is that a thing here?
I don't know if banned is the right word, but definitely at my time at different galleries, there's been works that, whether I was a curator or curatorial assistant, the people above me, or I've had to make that executive decision that this is just not appropriate to necessarily hang, especially if, kids are coming into the gallery.
Is that something you can talk about, or is that sort of subject to confidentiality? Because I'm curious as to what specifically.
I can talk about it.
I'm curious as to what specifically, like, what falls in that category? Like, what was it? I really want to.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but there was this exhibition that when I was working at Central Bank. It was one of the open categories. So the open category doesn't have a theme. And this guy painted the photo of Perry sticking his middle finger up, or he was like doing a Nazi salute, some foolishness like that. And it had like a China flag in it, and it was just like a very like politically, like, it was like political criticism, but in a very like on the nose kind of way. His name is EJ. I don't remember what EJ last name is. But that sparked a lot of controversy. And
I think I remember seeing that for some reason, and it was topical because at the time, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Everybody thought that Perry was in bed with the Chinaman, so.
Right. So the painting had to be removed from the gallery because it just was causing too much calls were being made. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah. During my time at the Central Bank, the same gallery Jodi was just speaking on, again, the open category, no theme. A lot of artists decided to go with some sort of sexually heavy works, graphic in content, and again, calls were made. And, even though I may have approved them from my level, once they were up and they were made public, enough people were offended that we then get the call to take it down. There's, it's too provocative. It's sparking too much unwanted attention. So funnily enough, people always feel like nudity is almost universally accepted in an art space, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
Well, I get it. I'm not gonna take that one on.
Yeah.
Now, have you had a moment of any particularly great inspiration during the lockdown period?
I've had like personal revelations that has influenced my work.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a development more than a like epiphany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the time for introspection affects people differently. I don't know. I find myself constantly in between oh my God, I want the country to finally open up so that I can go back to work in my office, but I also kind of enjoy just being home cooking when I feel like it.
And you get to be with your puppies.
Yeah, and it just got Bailey back from the vet. He broke his leg, so his leg is in a cast. I know. It's the cutest little thing. He still tries to get up and walk around with it and just kind of drags the cast behind.
Oh, Papa.
But yeah. So who are you guys' greatest inspiration? I guess that's a subjective question, so you can take it in turn.
I feel like, my circle, like Jodi is definitely one of the key players in the circle, and they're inspiring and not necessarily inspiring in terms of their subject matter, but just the way that they keep their foot on the gas, I'll think about, in terms of, subject matter or context, things like that. But initially that would definitely be my first answer. People in my circle that are on the ground with me, keeping their foot on the gas, keeping, creating relevant, necessary works. I think, there's nothing more inspiring than that. And that goes for, all of these female artists, our peers right now, whether they're curating, whether they're writing, taking photos or painting, like they all have kept me going, especially in the last 3 years since returning home. It's just like, there's a momentum and it makes you want to keep up.
Yeah.
That's good. Jodi?
I have the same answer. Definitely the people around me. And not just like, of course, like Angelika, Natalie, Cavante, Yasmin, like Leanne, all of my like inner circle art friends.
Oh, shout out to Leanne, boy. Leanne is my dog. I really like that. I really like those prints she's been doing on the fish.
Yeah, the fish prints are great.
She's so awesome.
And it's definitely, I'm just gonna plug some more about Leanne. Like it's just, again, she's relying on community, the fishermen, and she's making art out of the stuff that's around her. And I feel like there's nothing more special than that, especially in times like these and in the context of Green Turtle Key in Abaco, 2020. Like, yeah, I think it's awesome, relevant.
Like so much necessary work. And oh my God, like Leanne invited me to Abaco like a few years ago, and I went, and she was like having a first show, and I helped her, and like that was the first time, because my grandfather's from Abaco, so it was the first time I went to Abaco, the first time I saw the home he grew up in, and like I walked on like that ancestral land, and I met like my great grand aunt and all that sort of stuff. So if it wasn't for like Leanne and Yasmin, like certain like
you practically had a pilgrimage.
Yes, like certain like and this happens with all of like my friends, like all who are art practitioners, like Edwin Simonet, and just it's so crazy like how all of our lives like intersect. And even from like before I was born, I feel like I like so like overwhelmed with passion right now, but it's really crazy. They just, every time I talk to like any one of my friends, like I just make connections with my life and revelations. Hello? Hello? Excuse me, sorry.
No worries. Do what you gotta do. Well, that's how you know when things are live and when things are not.
Yeah, for sure. Like earlier when the dogs were tripping out, my cat started tripping out, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna attack me in the middle of this video.
Oh, what kind of cat do you have? I'm not much of a cat person, but I've seen two really pretty cats recently that might be bringing me around.
I'm not much of a cat person. I've always been a dog person, multiple dogs at once. This is my first cat. What kind of cat is she? She's a pot cake cat. I don't know. Like, she was a rescue.
She's a pot cat. It's fine.
She's a pot cat, yeah. She's a very pretty girl, and that's about it.
No, that's good. Welcome back.
Hey, Jodi.
No worries. Everything good?
Yeah. He was just in the area.
Okay. Cool. So let's talk a little bit of politics for a second. Not deep politics. How are you guys? The hot topic right now is who is to blame, really, for this whole COVID spike and for people traveling and all that. Where do you guys fall on the divide? So I don't really understand why everybody thinks it's the government's fault. I'm the kind of person who believes if you're a human and you have the freedom of conscience to make your own decisions, and you make a decision that turns out to be a bad one, you just deal with the consequences. I don't think that him opening the borders was like, okay, everybody go now. Like, I'm not saying that you must go or whatever. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Initial thoughts. The first thing is, I'm going to answer pretty freely. I'm not going to just dog the current political party, because I feel like, if this was something super unexpected, and we can't say one would have handled it better than the other, or one human.
Oh, absolutely not.
Better than the other.
I wouldn't even go that far.
Yeah. But I do have my thoughts. I do have my thoughts on it. And I've heard rumors. I could be incorrect. Please correct me if I'm not. But apparently we're not allowed to close the borders because of some travel treaty that we're a part of, which is why they had to be reopened. So I don't think it was a matter of choice.
I have let me not say never. I did not go and research it, but what you're talking about is, I believe, something called the Chicago Convention. Yeah. It's signed between the U.S. and the Bahamas. I don't know what it entails and all that. Or even if that's true, I don't know that either. But I'll accept it as true. Benefit of the doubt, I guess.
Yeah, the AG made that statement about the treaty.
Okay.
That definitely doesn't make things true. I mean, are we on the right track, wrong track? How do you guys feel?
I think that the government is to blame as well as we are to blame. I think that I have like a few things, because I feel like people think that the government is acting in a very contradictory kind of space, but I'm like, I don't think that the government could shut everything down, have police on every street, and like physically force you to stay in your house. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. I don't know. But I do think that whole like time period where it was like, oh yeah, you could travel for 72 hours and then come back and you don't have to do a COVID test. That wasn't
smart. Because it could take a second to get COVID. Why would you give someone a 3-day window? You shouldn't give them any window.
Did the government do that, or did Bahamas Air do that?
What, to say that you don't have to take a test?
In terms of running that promotion.
But I mean, it would take the government to mandate the tests. So
I get that, but hear me out. If the government mandates it, and then Bahamas Air goes and says, "Hey, fly with us. The government said this. Let's move." Are either of those things like obligatory? Does it mean that, like, you have to go and travel and get back in 72 hours?
No, definitely not. And that's why I say I blame them and us. It's a twofold kind of thing, because though they did open it, I feel like you have to, and I feel this sounds so wrong, but you have to make these rules for like the simplest person that you're dealing with, because I think that oftentimes, we talk to educated people and we talk to people who we think that has like the same level of common sense, but not everybody, thinks of things in the same way.
It's sad when there's levels of common sense.
Right?
Right? Yeah. Boy.
So you have to make these like rules and these decisions for that person who's gonna say, I'm gonna go to like Florida from Nassau. I'm gonna go to every mall. I'm gonna touch up all the things, not wear a mask.
I'm gonna eat all kind of food out.
So like, how do you deal with that person? Like, dealing with that person needs to be the standard for how we deal with everybody. And I don't think that we've been dealing with that person, because we still get like, announcements for the lockdown like 2 days before the lockdown. And for every time, even when we had the weekend lockdowns, people just flood the food stores.
Yeah.
It don't matter. They just always would. So I'm like, okay, if like 25% of the population like reacts in this way, how are we making the rules to like combat them? not us, I mean, I still go to food as well, but like not us who would like get like stuff delivered and stuff, you know, like you don't make the rules with these people. You make the rules for like my neighbors who, like I said, still have the little like bears and things like that in their yard. That's who you make the rules for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going back to your earlier question in terms of, I don't know, who's to blame, I feel like, you know, once borders were reopened for whatever reason, whatever treaty, they'd already been closed for weeks prior to that, and businesses had already started shutting down, and people were already unable to make rent and to feed their families and their children. It's like, it almost makes the first lockdown negated, you know, and it was irresponsible and it was unfair. You know, I personally know people whose businesses were on the, you know, heading down, and then you're allowed to open back up for 2 weeks, whether it's curbside or open, and then you're closed right down because of decisions that are beyond your control. And it's not fair. And we're not, there's nowhere in the country that I'm aware of, whether it be residential or commercial, that's catching a break on rent right now, you know, and NIB is barely covering survival. And, you know, like they put out the statement earlier this week, that's ending September. So then what, you know?
Then what is a big question? A big,
and then also saw something where like the Ministry of Tourism was like, our fall bookings are looking promising. And I'm like, okay, so like, what's the real tea here? Like, what's really happening?
Fall bookings. I mean, there may just be some really optimistic people around the world that are like, oh, go book that Bahamas vacation.
Manifest. I don't think that would be the most responsible thing for us to do.
I don't know.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not now.
I think it's both. I think it's us, and my question, I got a question yesterday if sociologists are being like consulted when they're devising how to go about these lockdowns and stuff, because you have to know the people, because it's us. It's still us. And it's the government. So like the people who know us being consulted. Because Bahamians are very, like, some of us are very defiant people. And we were like, just
4,200 of us apparently.
No, like we just be defiant because like we don't care, you know, like forget the conspiracy theories. Like
I feel like also finding the loophole has almost been like, is an evolved survival tactic of Bahamians. You know, it's what we've had to do to survive, and by nature we're gonna always find a loophole, whether it be for debauchery or for survival. At this point we'll find the loophole, and you know, that's in any situation. So especially now, you know, people describe the government as parents, and we've been grounded, and so, you know, you're looking for that 12 o'clock when parents are asleep to sneak out the bedroom window, like, you know, it's like that kind of thing. Like we are that. And I feel like, you know, there's those of us who are staying in bed, not sneaking out the window at 12, that are watching people like Jodi's neighbors, and just knowing that you're pulling the team down.
Boy, that's a touchy one. I think the next few weeks are going to be very, very telling in terms of how this COVID situation. Well, not next few weeks, the next few days, as a matter of fact, will be very challenging.
I think he's speaking tomorrow to let us know some stuff.
Yeah, I don't recall what day it's been moved to, but I guess it would be tomorrow if the lockdown is supposed to expire on the 19th, I think.
Which is Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
You know, he likes to give us a 2-day window, so.
And then on Monday, which is tomorrow, everybody's gonna flock to the food store.
Yeah.
Like, everybody in the family will be on the road again because, you know.
I mean, the irony of this, if you think about it, particularly for Angelika, is this is one time when people who are holding on to hope will appreciate the duality of the phrase "hope is a weapon."
Yeah. Yep. The duality is heavy here.
It really is.
Because, you know, it's where you put your hope that sort of determines the outcome. And
That's a good segue to my next question, in terms of jumping back into the art conversation. If there were one place, you know, and you had no restrictions that you could go and tag with your, or you could put a mural, let's say, where would you choose?
Oh, you know, it'd be really cool to mural on the Columbus statue or to replace it with something else. You know, whether we just remove it, you know, maybe there's not a budget for a new statue or a new something. I could just tag the sidewalk right there.
What you could do is, like, you know, make him so that he's wearing like camouflage pants and some fire lens oaks and be Bahamian.
Yeah, like I've thought, like there's so many things you could, like, if they're so dead set on keeping it, you know, there's cool things we can do to the statue to as a sort of reclamation. But you know,
Jodi, I remember, at least I think you and I had a conversation about that statue. Are you for moving it, or do you have no feelings about it?
Move it.
He's not allowed to have no feelings about it.
No, I want us to move it and just like not put anything there. Like I think the steps are enough, and it's like a beautiful photo, a beautiful view of the house without the statue there. You know, just leave it blank.
Yeah, I had a conversation on Blank Canvas with Amanda about it, and she was talking about the budget of replacing it, and I said, well, don't replace it. Like the point is for it to be removed, and then, you know, she was talking about repurposing it or where it may, you know, find a new life. And I mean, I feel like it could find an awesome home with, you know, at the National Trust out by Clifton, and it could then serve the country by being a coral garden. Like, and you know, I no tea, no shade. Like, I feel like that would actually give it purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, my thinking was send it to San Salvador and put it by, you know, the Columbus Landing cross down there, and you have boom, a Columbus Park. Could just love yourself. But that
But
works.
then that's creating another monument. You know, you're just changing.
Well, adding to an existing one can technically.
Yeah.
And I think the issue with I had like a whole interview about this too, is that the issue is not the statue, but the prominence of the building where the statue lies. Because Mount Fitzwilliam within itself is a monument that goes back to like racial divide, segregation,
And is still not owned by the Bahamian people.
Yeah. So it's like this total thing now. So if you're talking about reclaiming Columbus' statue, then you need to reclaim the office of Governor General. And you need to reclaim that building as well. And then you need to reclaim Bay Street, and you need to reclaim the surrounding areas as, you know, and decolonize it. That's what needs to happen. Because if you were to put anything else in that place, it's still the perpetuation of colonialism and this hierarchy of things, and actually like saying that, okay, if we put Samilo Butler, Randall Folks there, then it's like you saying, okay, well, we revere Randall Folks so much and his work so much that we've actually, you know, perpetuated the things in which he fought for, which is not the total case. There's still certain things that, you know, he's advocated for that we haven't, the place that we haven't come to yet. If you talk about like women's rights and putting a woman there, it's like, we haven't gotten to that place yet. So it's like, just leave it empty, leave it blank, decolonize the whole thing, and let's go for our lives.
Are you just saying that in the context of where the Columbus statue is, or is that your sort of general feeling towards statues and monuments in general? Because I actually had a question about that I was going to follow up with.
Columbus statue.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what do you think, I don't understand perhaps the difficulty in making a statue or a bust or something like that. But one of the things that always bothered me about the Bahamas is if you go to a place like, have either of you ever been to New Orleans? New Orleans is a good example. DC, New York, any of the big cities, London, any of those kinds of places where a lot of history happened in this particular city. There's always a ton of monuments to their like national heroes all over the place. Like in New Orleans, there's all these dudes on horses, and depending on how the horse is positioned, it means a different thing in terms of how the person died. And there's all this symbolism about the place. Why don't we have more of that? Like Linden Pindling statue is about waist high if I'm standing up, and it's in the middle of some trees you can't even see out by the airport. I don't even know what they did with the Ronnie Butler statue that was downtown.
Campus now.
It's where?
At UB.
Oh, excellent. Wow, that's a great place to put it, because where it was downtown didn't make any sense either way. But why don't we have more of those, do you think?
Yeah, like personally, I love, I think Tyrone created it, the rake and scrape one, the saw that's on the steps if you're on Shirley Street, it would be on the left of the St. Andrew's Presbyterian Kirk. It's like yellow and blue.
Going up the staircase.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. Like, it's obviously the Bahamian colors, it's an homage to our culture and music making. So like, I feel like icons are incredibly important. They spark conversation. Obviously, tourism is our main industry, and there's a lot of walking tours or, things like that. And I feel like those are more relevant and necessary conversations to be having in front of monuments, things like that. And I'm a visual person. I feel like icons are important. I agree with you. I feel like we should have more, relevant to our contemporary and our history statues.
I think that it's a multifold thing. So I think one is our interest in public art and our, like, how much money we really want to allocate for that and the preservation of it. Because there have been like murals and other like public art installations that has happened, especially like Bay Street in the tourism area, but they, were either painted over or people took it down and they just can't find them, or like just like different things. We don't have like a country that believes in preservation, and that even goes into like the preservation of legacies of people. So I think that's why we don't have a lot of statues and monuments and different things like that, because we don't have people who, I can't say we don't have people because that would be like erasing someone, whatever. But I think we don't have people who, with the money or access to the money, who think that, it's a good thing to make this sculpture. Because if you talk to people like Andrew John, who did the Celine Finland sculpture, he'd tell you just like how hard that was. And those things ain't cheap, you know what I mean? So I think it's that. I think too, it's us being a Black people who don't feel like we should have other Black people at that statue as well, which is a very touchy thing, but yeah. So, and then too, our history is just for the books and just for like school children.
Yeah,
I think that's a perception that needs to be changed. I think art history really needs to be seen. It needs to be felt. Like I should be able to stand at a place. The Burma Road riots might be a vague example, but if there were a statue in the area where Burma Road used to be to commemorate that, I should be able to stand there and just absorb that moment in time that's being preserved by that monument. My personal favorite is actually Samilo Butler's bust downtown for a number of reasons, but most fantastically, I'll say, is because it's surrounded by it's surrounded by our national flower, and on either side it has our national tree. I don't know how deliberate that was, that the yellow elders and the lignum vitae happen to be there, but that always makes that space feel a little bit more profound to me. Like it feels like I'm standing there and he's holding this book and looking at Queen Victoria like, y'all need to move the statue like now, because I can't see the Senate building behind you. You know what I mean? Like it gives me that kind of vibe.
And it's almost special in a way, like nature's agreeing, like those botanicals are flourishing on the side of him, like, exactly. Almost again as national symbols that are sort of also facing the statue, also like, you gotta move.
yeah, exactly. It's two lignum vitae trees and then opposite the two cannons. So here they are coming to destroy our land again. But we don't have to go that deep into it. But sorry, Angelika, I think I cut you off. You were about to say something on the whole statue thing, or were you done now?
Yeah, I think I was just going to sort of reiterate what Jodi said in terms of we're not ready to necessarily worship our own people. And I think it's a crazy concept because our history since independence is so short, like our parents were born before independence, And it's crazy that so much has been forgotten between that space and now. And I feel like it speaks to, again, the fact that we need to decolonize even the way we think, because we're not ready to make another Bahamian an icon in that sense, or a monument. And I feel like, again, that stems from colonialism and the fact that we may not feel like our own people are worthy of that same, like, you know, iconography, I guess. Yeah, but that's all I was gonna say.
I guess that requires a real shift in mindset.
Yes.
I don't know if we're mature enough as a people yet to be able to process that thought. Unfortunately,
and re-education I was talking about just need to be flipped on the head, I guess.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I think that's about it for what I had on my agenda in my mind, because I don't kind of script these things, just kind of went with it. Is there anything else you guys want to add on? Jodi, had any thoughts on the wine, by the way?
Oh, it's really good. I wish I had eaten a little bit more before I drank it, but it's really good.
Yeah, you saw me here eating cookies in the meantime, between time. I just went and switched to the red and then back to the white, and now I'm going to need lunch.
Yeah, but no, the light is really good. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, not a problem. So it was really good talking to you guys.
Yeah, this was fun. I always love sharing space with Jodi, and you made it super comfortable and organic. It all flowed well.
Yeah, well, that's the point. We're just talking. Yeah. We're sharing ideas as millennials, as visionaries. And
best name ever.
Say again, Jodi?
I said, well, Muddafork is the best name ever.
Yeah, so many people have been responding. They're like, wait, that's genius. Yeah.
I'm with it. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, well, cool, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will post this up on the IG page in about 30 minutes time. So if you want to go watch it and share it, I'll make sure I tag you both in it. And enjoy. Cheers.
Thank you. I wish I had something to cheers. I'll just dap you.
I will make sure, big dap. I will make sure I sort you out tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds good, darling. Thank you.
No problem.
Appreciate you both.
Later.
Take it easy.